Let's start that again. Good morning, everyone. This is a heavenly arrow morning. Sorry about the confusion just now, but everything's going to be great today. Let me get everybody situated in terms of categories of tea, because for those of you who haven't been with us consistently, you may have some confusion about black tea versus red tea versus yellow, green, white. So we know that the range goes from unoxidized, which are the green teas, all the way down to true black teas, which is what we're talking about today. So a true black tea is both fermented and oxidized. A red tea is what in the West is called a black tea, and it's oxidized only. So those are some differences, and those are some of the things that lead to confusion about the classification of tea. It's further complicated because the Chinese have always been confused by why in the world do Westerners call what we call red tea, why do they call it black tea? And what can we do to help them understand that there's another type of tea which we truly call black tea? And so what they've done is they've taken the word "hei," which literally means black, and then translated it for the benefit of Westerners as dark tea. And the purpose of that has been to try and help Westerners understand that there is this category of tea which is truly different from what we usually call black tea here. And it's a fermented tea. So Heavenly Arrow belongs to this category. What other teas that we've had also belong to this category? So we've done sessions on pu'er before, P-U-E-R-H. Or P-U-E-R, which is typically what most Westerners have had access to in terms of true black teas. Very little of the Heavenly Arrow is on the market. The other tea that is on the Western market, the other tea that we've talked about is Thousand Tales. So you see Thousand Tales right here. And this is the tool. This is a compressed tea, and this is the tool that's used to break off pieces. So Heavenly Arrow and Thousand Tales belong to the same family. So where does this family live? They live in Hunan Province. It's a fermented tea. Let me think about it. Aren't all fermented teas then approximately the same in taste? Well, today we're going to find out, because I'm not clear. We'll find out when we do the tasting today, and then you'll tell me whether the other fermented teas you've had are close to this in terms of flavor. So that's the intro to fermented tea. And I'll go in detail through the process of Heavenly Arrow. And by the time we're done today, you should understand, at least in a rudimentary way, the difference between pu'er and the so-called Anhua dark teas / truly black teas. Before we go there, let's talk about the news of the shop this week. The most exciting thing that we did this week was we completed sampling all of the Cliff teas that we were sent samples of, and some that came unexpectedly. Completed all of those, have placed the order, and so this will be the last large order this year of the teas, and then you'll start to see the new teas go up this next week, because I've already named a number of them. They're almost set to go. Would have been sooner if we hadn't had that unfortunate incident a couple weeks ago but we're now back on track and ready to go. So that's been the best news that we've had this week. So let me go through the process of how Heavenly Arrow is made. First off, the location from where this is from has many different microclimates. And these microclimates are different from Hunan microclimates. So remembering in Hunan, that's where the pu'er is coming from. This is coming from Anhua. And that microclimate is somewhat more temperate during certain parts of the year and somewhat more humid during the summer months of the year. So we've got some differences. And even within the mountainous areas, there are differences between various mountains and various valleys. So that's the first thing. The next thing we need to understand about Anhua black tea is that there are several different formats with which it's processed into. So what are these formats called? So one is Heavenly Arrow, and that's a loose leaf format. The second is the Thousand Tales, and you saw that's a compressed tea format. There are at least two other compressed tea formats, neither of which we carry in the shop, but I can describe them to you. They are bricks, and the bricks are about 4 inches wide and about a little bit longer than that, probably 8 inches long. And they're these big bricks, and there are two different types of them. One is just called a food brick. And that brick has something special in addition to the tea. It has organisms in it that create what look like yellow flowers. They're not really flowers. They're microorganisms at work. And those microorganisms have received a lot of attention in China and in Western scientific circles, because those are supposed to be good, creating or reducing damage done by diabetes. There's a bunch of other things that they're supposed to have a pretty good health benefit for. So that's in the food brick. Then they have something called a true black brick, which doesn't have those organisms in it. And that's also produced in this area. So you're probably all thinking to yourselves, okay, I understand this. 4 different types of tea come from this area. It's all the same varietal, okay? So really, these farmers just got creative. And what they decided to do was to create different ways to present the tea. So perhaps as a starting point, you can be there, but let's develop what's really happened. What's really happened is they graded these teas in 4 different ways. So what we're going to have today is the highest grade of these Anhua black teas. So it's 1 bud and 1 leaf. That's the picking format. And the picked format is a later pick format. In other words, it's after Qingmingjie. So that means it's after April 4th or after April 5th. Sometimes as late as around April 20th or 21st or 22nd. So it's a little bit more mature first pick, right? All right. What about the other things? Other things. Ridiculous. The other types of tea that are made from the same varietal. So the Thousand Tales is usually 1 bud and 3 leaves. The food brick that I talked about is usually 1 bud and 3 or 4 leaves. And then that black brick is 5 or 6 leaves. There are no more buds at that point. So it's that whole 5 or 6 leaf. So you have different grades. So in Chinese, they talk about the special grade. See, usually here in the West, we think, oh, first grade, that's what I want. No, no, you want special grade because special grade is above first grade. Then you have first, second, and third grades. So this is a grading system that is used in China. And that's why you have 4 different types. So the question then would follow, what is the market for each of these grades? And when did this process start? So let's talk about the market first, and then we're going to have to go into a little bit of controversy when we talk about when it started. The markets are easy. When you get to the lower grades, that would be the brick grades, whether it's the black brick or the fu brick. Those are going to different parts of either the old Tea Horse Road or the old Silk Road. In other words, one of them is going out to Xinjiang and that direction, Central Asia. The other one is going up to northern China, not China, beyond north of China, Mongolia, Russia. And so these were export teas. And that's why, and there's a certain Chinese cultural thought process about this. It's a lesser grade, but a stronger flavor. Why was this chosen? And this is not controversial. This is truly how the Chinese have thought about it, and historically how they've written about it. The peoples in Central Asia, the peoples in Russia and Mongolia, what do they do when they drink tea? They blend it. They put other things in it. They're either putting spices or butter or ghee or milk. They're doing something with it. And therefore, and the Chinese have a cute way of saying this, for their body types, this tea is most appropriate. And really, what they're talking about is they're blending all this stuff with it. So for Heavenly Arrow and the Thousand Tales, and the Thousand Tales did actually also go in both directions, but less, because less is produced. And Heavenly Arrow was mostly consumed internally because it's special grade. And actually, some of that even found its way to the emperor. All right, now we're about to start into the controversial part of the discussion. Yes.
What is the name? What name of the area in Hunan Province?
It's called Anhua. And again, now we're about to get into the controversial part of today's discussion. This is the only part that is completely unclear and contradictory. So all of these sessions, we've talked about the order of tea development. So let's go back to why tea was developing. 1368, the emperor issues a decree, which, by the way, he repeats in 1391. And the repetition at the top says, remember, I said, obey. That's the first line. And the admonition contained in the order was no more tea cakes. Stop doing tea cakes. Stop doing tribute tea cakes. The emperor at that time felt that it was too hard for peasants. He felt that it was damaging their ability to be productive. So he ordered the stoppage of that practice. So in a way, the analogy that we most easily understand here is prohibition. Stop doing alcohol. Did we stop doing alcohol? Well, we did at Safeway and Lucky's, but in the stills, in the backcountry, we were doing alcohol like crazy. And therefore, the development of alcohol expanded because everybody has a different recipe, They're trying new things. They're having failures. They're having successes. It's promoting growth of the industry through development of the product. Well, as soon as you said to the peasants, no more tea cakes, and actually to the tea literati, no more tea cakes, all of a sudden they're thrown into this prohibition-like state whereby they start experimenting. Okay, it's got to be loose leaf. Okay, we know how to handle loose leaf, but are there some other interesting things we can do with loose leaf? And through trial and error and through fortuitous accidents, the tea industry developed and other categories of tea developed. So yellow tea, true black tea, red tea, all of those developed because pre-emperor prohibition, everything was essentially green tea, as far as we understand. Now, here's where this gets complicated, because I've always said that it was the cliff teas that started this revolution. And really, that's an unfair way to say it. What I should have said was it is the cliff teas that made their appearance first as a new way of processing tea. Recently, and until recently, I really didn't believe the folk stories. The folk stories were always that this true black tea had been around since the end of the Ming Dynasty, but I hadn't seen any verification of that. I hadn't seen any documentation which led me to believe, yeah, that's true. I think it's a later development. Turns out there is some documentation that's being uncovered, and scholars in China are now of the opinion, not 100%, but largely of the opinion that this black tea, this true fermented tea, really started to make its appearance at the end of the Ming Dynasty. Oh, I got to give you a year. Let's give you 1595. So sometime in that range, this process apparently was already being performed in this area. All right, so that gives you the markets, that gives you when this probably started, it gives you a rough guideline as to when it might have started. Scientists keep uncovering stuff. How does this happen? It happens because tombs are dug up, you've got documentation in there, and all of a sudden you discover, oh, they were already drinking this at this time or that time. So that's why the history in China and the history of what's happened in China keeps developing, because we keep getting better and better information. Okay, I've way over talked. The tea masters walked back and forth about 100 times, indicating by time number 50, you've exceeded your time. So it is my great pleasure to bring the numinous tea master to brew with you, or actually first demonstrate and then brew with you.
Right. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Sophie. Yeah, today we do fermented tea. It's black tea from the Hunan. It's I call the Anhua Hei Cha. So yeah, if you copy my so Chinese word, so Anhua Hei Cha. Hei Cha is black tea. So today I the follow the traditional into that area. So today looking my space, it's different. So yeah. So this is my style, in the Hunan, when I put the tea working Hunan factory. So this is it's the follow me long time. Yeah, this is Gaiwan, also. Yeah, this is the small cup. Yeah, after so let John the culture about the culture of this side. So I do the easy look at the section. My section was small, right? All the time, even at home, even I work in tea factory, something. So 3 cups. So, okay, John, help me, yeah.
Okay, so her tableau is set up this way with a tea tray, 3 cups, a tea toy that has good feng shui. We indicate the gaiwar and the small cup because part of what you're going to learn about this is there's a rinse involved in this, which is a little unusual. We'll talk about that.
For me, so this is, I think another work here. So for me, look at the standard, another, so in high or as high or not, this style or not, this style, no, it's different how. I always, the first time, I always help myself, and then it's fun.
So
a lot of
she's
fun,
using
yeah.
200-degree water. Going to warm the cups.
I'm slowly, so also.
All right, she seated the cups. Make sure that the cups are completely clean. She's drawing 175-degree water.
这里呢，我要准备 first 175.
So she's preparing the 175 first. So she pours a cup, and really that cup she's going to let cool down slightly while she draws the 200-degree water. Because remember, unlike almost any other tea, this requires a rinse. Now, when you use the word rinse, in most people's minds, there's the thought, oh, maybe the tea is dirty. Maybe it needs to be cleaned. That's not what the rinse really is here. The rinse here is to actually change the nature of the tea leaves before you start brewing. So she puts it in a cup, the 3 grams in the cup, and is going to put the 200-degree water in that cup, full cup of it. She's going to set her timer for 1 minute. So this is large cup. So many of you are thinking, well, if they drink this small cup, what do? They actually use something like a gaiwar, and they put the leaves in 200-degree water, and then they have a set of stylized. What do I mean by stylized? Over time, they've developed rules whereby they wash the tea, and I use the wash and rinse are synonymous here. They do that 9 times with different amounts of time between each rinse. So the first one, for example, starts out at 15 seconds, and the next one is 25, and then they go back to 10. I mean, it's a whole elaborate ceremony. Now, we're Westerners. It's hard to think and remember 9 different steps of rinsing. And you'd never drink this tea if you had to do that. So instead, we developed the 1-minute rinse at 200 degrees, which you will then discard. The tea at that point will be ready for actual steeping. Pre-rinse, if you just try and drink this stuff straight up, unbearable in terms of flavor. This makes the flavor very, very good. And this is the technique that they actually use in China. So this is, obviously we've changed the timings for the large cup, but the sense of rinsing this is absolutely essential. Oh.
So it's the follow me how this is very important. So if you do so different, so with me, I thinking that when you taste that, so after that, so it's the flavors change. So yeah, it's very important.
So you discard the
Yeah,
roots.
right.
Do not drink that. Remember, we had the 175 cooling down a little bit. That's what you're going to use to steep.
Right now, you can smell, the sweet. Okay. Yeah, it's correct. So everybody, the looking what I do. So it's follow. I know you like change. You like, the change every day. Yeah, this is for you. So yeah, but for me, slowly, gentle, slowly. Yeah.
So you apply the 175. You set your timer for 2 minutes. And then at the conclusion of 2 minutes, you're going to separate the tea liquor from the leaves. You get at least three great steepings with this, so you don't throw the leaves away, because and especially if you like this, you can get 3 great steepings of this. All right, so how is this different from pour? Let's talk. Remember, this is 1 bud and 1 leaf. When you're doing pour, you're generally picking down to the 3rd or 4th leaf, and you really don't care as much about the buds. That's the first thing. Second thing, when you pick, you bring it into the production area, and the production area tries to get it, once there's enough volume, they start the production line, and the production line at a farm starts with the wall. So the first thing they do is go ahead and fry it, and they fry it at a hot temperature. Every farmer uses a different amount of time, and they're looking for a certain aroma. So I ask you this, are they only frying 1 bud and 1 leaf? No, they have many streams of picks coming in at the same time. They fry everything at the same time. After frying, they actually then roll. So they roll the leaves. In the old days, always by hand. Now they have some machinery that's helpful with that. But the tradition is to actually roll by hand. And then starts to come magic. We love magic. 2 minutes is expired. Not in a hurry. Tea master is going to separate the liquid from the tea leaves. And here's what you end up with. So this is a beautiful kind of golden, light golden color. And as usual, we're going to enter the quality arena. So first thing we're going to do is look at these leaves. We're going to smell them. Oh my gosh. Wow. So you're going to make a note of whatever it is I said wow about, and you're going to tell me why I said wow. And then we enter the tea or the quality arena by taking our first sip. Remember, when we're taking this sip, and by the way, this is a 175-degree sip, so it's not like a cliff tea where you're doing an inhalation. And you're really going to pay attention with this tea to mouthfeel. You're going to pay attention to astringency or lack thereof. You're going to see, is there an aftertaste? And then, and remembering that for everybody, energetics means something different. Really, it's how you feel. And all of us feel a little bit different after we drink this, but we're going to pay attention to those feelings. Okay, and so this isn't, it's 175, so you can actually take a moderate, a bigger sip. Surprises all along the route. I think I'm going to take another sip. Okay, it's your turn to brew.
Before, do you have any suggestions about how to rinse at 200 and brew, then brew at 175?
Yes, I do. So you should actually do two things. You should have a pot or a kettle on the stove that gets to 212. You're going to use that for your rinsing. So it doesn't matter whether it's 212, 211, 198, 199. There's range there. Does not matter. You don't have to be precise with that. You notice that if you don't have anything more than that kettle, then you need to do the following thing. When it comes to 212, you separate a glass that you've already pre-rinsed and then pour that 212 in and leave it to the side for 4 to 5 minutes. And that's going to be easy because you're going to be busy here rinsing. So you're going to heat up a glass, right? You're going to pour that water out. You still have this 212, which is declining because time is passing. This 212, it's declining because the volume is smaller and time is passing. And in here, you're going to dump the leaves, put the 212, and it's already not 212 anymore, right? It's about 208, 207, something like that. You're going to put it in here, and you're not going to freak out. He said 200. This is 207. I'm going to have 3.5% deviation. No, don't think that way. And the rinse stage, a little bit hotter or just slightly cooler, is not going to give that type of deviation. You're still going to be completely within range. So without hesitation, go ahead and fill the cup up. And then at the conclusion of 1 minute, and by the way, at the conclusion of 1 minute, this is already concluded 2 or 3 minutes, right? And it's only going to have 1 more minute to go. You separate, right? And then you set 1 more minute on the clock, and this water over here, this water over here, which has been waiting now for almost 4 or 5 minutes, it's ready to go ahead and use. Why does it not matter if this is, say, your 212 is hotter than my 212? Let's posit that as a possibility. And say that this end result here is 185 instead of 175. Will you get a demonstratively bad result? The answer is no. This is one style of tea where if you end up hotter, it's not going to flatten the flavor profile. And you'll see after you taste it, because the reason that this is a mystery to you is because you haven't tasted it yet. Once you taste it, you'll know I'm right. Okay.
Yeah, 这样เข้า出 really good. So, but also so I do in the farmer. So they don't have the 175. So only 200. So but also so John point is really good. It's for everybody. But for me, it's my home. We don't have the the 175. But John come to my house yesterday. How do you do it? I said, but John understand me. So at home, I have the 7, 8, 12 different size cups. That I do all the time. So okay, so same I do at home. The 200 only. Okay. So what I do. This is 200. 200 also now, so I think you understand, clean, you know, the cup, warming cup first. So, okay, 400, I don't have 175, I'm so sorry, so 1, 2, but this ring, this is the clean, you know, I don't need it. This my teacher, okay. This is the
Is microwaving the water for the rinse also acceptable?
This is an interesting question. And the technical answer is no. But if you're in an emergency situation, pretend I didn't say that, no. The reason that the answer is no is because microwave water actually ends up tasting different. And most people, because they're not fully conscious when they're drinking water, but boy, that didn't sound good. Let me back that up again. Most people, because they're distracted by what they're doing, don't really realize that, hey, this tastes different, because the chemical nature of the water has been changed.
Yeah. It's simple. I give you, you know, that I don't have 175. I'm only, you know, 200 this way. You know, at home, simply looking how what I do. I think people smart. You know, I open the leaves. I take a time. So easy. I powder. This bit steam. Look at butter. 300 water inside, but I need 175. Take time, open, put in here. So put in here, easy, right? So steam, you know the display steam. Yeah, this right now. Yeah. So okay, I working. I have time. Okay, this become, you know, the low temperature. This also the people, you know, the everybody see me. I use 200, but I, you know, I put the glass first. Take time. This is easy. 200. I can range. 200. I don't have 175 here. This is 200. Okay. This is 200. Okay. But the big glass. This is my section at home. So 200. Okay.
So after you put the 200 in, you're going to set your timer for 1 minute.
Yeah.
So this again is called the rinse. And so what Xiaobei was trying to show you just a minute ago, that there are various ways to get down to an appropriate temperature.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry, again, because of this category of tea. And again, because of something surprising you're about to discover, you do not need to be so finicky. We're usually extremely finicky about the temperature and about how the water should behave and so forth. Not the case with this. And again, you'll find out why in a minute. Okay, your timer should have gone off. You separate the rinse water from the tea leaves, and you discard the rinse water. You do not drink this.
Slowly. You know that, yeah. at home, same thing. It's a low temperature right now. I can feel it. Look, not 200. It's lower. It's easy. So this is the hot, super hot. Everybody, see, I use 200. I smell.
So you put the 175 in, you set your timer for 2 minutes. All right, and let's continue the processing because we've combined picks from different grades. We fry. At the conclusion of frying, we roll, and then we do magic. Oh, wait a minute. What sort of magic? The magic of fermentation. So if this had been a poorer tea, what would the order have been? It had been picked, sun dry it outside, fry it lightly, roll, and then it's called, and put it outside again to dry. That's called unfinished or malcha. All right, this is going to produce an unfinished tea also for this group of teas in Anhua. So what's going to happen is fermentation. And the fermentation is going to happen from 12 to 24 hours. So there's already a huge difference because remember, for the composted pour, it's 45 to 60 days. Does there have to be a taste difference? I think you can tell by the great difference in timing that there has to be a taste difference. Also, what percentage of this gooey mass is going to be water? It's going to be about 65%. When you're doing pour, it's going to be about 30%. Oh, so we have real different processes going on. Is that going to lead to different microbial agents acting on the tea leaves and different percentages? The answer is yes, and I'll get into that in a minute. All right, your 2 minutes is finished. You're going to separate the tea leaves from the tea liquor. And now we're going to enter the quality arena. So how do we enter this? We first look at the tea leaves. We smell. Goodness. And you take notes because in a minute you're going to talk to me about this. Remember, this is 175 degrees, so you can really stick your nose in here and see how different this is. And then you're going to take a 175-degree sip, coat your tongue, and think about what you're feeling. See if there is any aftertaste, and then think about energetics.
There's no shortage of comments.
Oh, good.
The wet leaves have a woody but sweet aroma, and the broth has just a whisk of intangible pleasure to me.
Woody, sweet aroma leaves. The first sip or whiff of the tea liquor. Sip, right?
Yes.
The first sip has
No, wisp.
whiff. Okay.
Wisp.
A wisp has intangible sweetness. Is that right? Intangible sweet. Yes. Good start. So woodsiness with hints of sweetness. Yeah.
A bit of a hay scent.
Bit of a hay scent. Good.
And bright, sweet malt scent on the wet leaves.
Bright, sweet malt scent. This is a great comment. I want to kind of corral this comment because it is bright. And one of the things, if you're drinking this too quickly, you don't recognize that brightness. Good catch.
Wet leaves smell earthy and spicy. Can't identify which one yet.
Wet leaves smell earthy and spicy. Can't identify which spice yet. And we're going to come back to this comment because I'm going to make another comment related to this. But let's continue to hear your comments.
Undertone of pear.
Undertone of pear. So what the suggestion here is that there's a little bit of fruitiness. And remember, pear has kind of a light fruitiness, a very pleasant fruitiness, along with a slight bit of sweetness. Good.
The only mild astringency is on my lips. The liquor is very juicy and warm.
Okay. You all are tremendous. So this comment says the only astringency is on this commentator's lips, in the mouth, juicy. Really a pleasant, easy to drink taste. Yes.
The scent of the tea liquor seems to have a subtle roundness like an oolong, but for a moment I thought I detected orange.
Scent of the liquor has a roundness, suggesting, a subtle roundness, by the way, suggesting an oolong. But upon further review, as the commentator is thinking about it, there is that hint of orange.
I'm getting the hay scent as well from the leaves. The first sip was definitely sweet, pear flavor, juicy, viscous, and smooth.
Pear flavor, viscous, juicy, and smooth. The hints on the first one, go back to those hints of sweetness, is that right?
Yes.
Hints of sweetness. So everybody is getting that sweetness. You're characterizing it with different fruits. We're all in balance.
And that, to get us caught up, a drying after effect on the tongue.
A drying after effect on the tongue. Good catch. And we'll talk about that along with the spicy comment, because I'm going to come back and talk about those in a minute. Okay, so while you're thinking about this, I'm almost ready to give you a hint of something else, but not yet. Let's go through the process a little bit more. So remembering that we're at the unfinished tea stage after we go through the fermentation process, and that the fermentation process is really two main things happening. You've got microbial agents, so bacteria, and you have fungi. So what sort of agents are working on Heavenly Arrow? So we've got 5 main agents, and the 5 main agents, out of those 5, 2 are bacteria and 3 are fungus. Nobody on the science area knows exactly how those interact, but they see the results of fungi being very, very strong at the beginning, and then as time goes on, different fungi becoming stronger. Same with bacteria. You have actually 2 common fungi that are working on this Heavenly Arrow as well as poor, but certainly in different ratios. So you have something called Cyberlinera, and that's primary with the Heavenly Arrow. Aspergillus, and we've talked about Aspergillus before. Aspergillus niger is primary with poor. Is there any Aspergillus acting on the Heavenly Arrow? There's a bit, but it's not anywhere primary, the same as it is in poor. Is there any of that Cyberlinera in the poor? For some poors, there is. So we've gotten in the weeds. didn't mean to be in the weeds. The main takeaway here is that fungi and bacteria are very active in doing flavor changes. They have 12 to 24 hours to get themselves sorted out. After this gooey, thick mess is finished, and remember, every farmer makes that decision when it's finished, or every producer makes that decision when it's finished, they take it out and dry it. And as soon as they dry a little bit, then they roll it again. In fact, I did that in the opposite manner. They take it out, they roll it, and then they dry it. So the first roll, pre-fermentation, is to break down the cells and get all of those liquids on the surface. The second roll after the fermentation is to do a further breakdown and distribute the flavors among the leaves. After the rolling, the second roll that is, you go to a station and you divide the leaves into grades. So remember, we have the special grade, which is the bud and the leaf. Then you go all the way down to 5 or 6 leaves. So they divide. And at that point, it is unfinished tea. So all 4 processes go through that first set of processing modality. Afterwards, all 4 go through different processes to finish. So what does Heavenly Arrow go through as a process to finish? It's steamed, and then it's dried, and then it's aged. So that's basically the process of Heavenly Arrow. And it goes on the market usually about a year after it's gone through this process. This tea, like any fermented tea, has a very long shelf life and is really unique in flavor. Again, as you're tasting this, think about the pourers you tasted and think about the wild differences between the two.
Gorgeous orange color with lovely subtle haze. I said pear originally, but now I'm thinking underripe blackberry.
I like this. So gorgeous orange, right?
Yes.
Gorgeous orange color. And this commentator is changing their thought about the fruit feeling of pear and saying it has, for them, more of a blackberry. So there's, let me put some words on top of this. So that's a suggestion that this flavor is getting stronger, because blackberry, from my perspective, is always stronger than pear.
Going to flavors from the kitchen, I'm thinking of a baked pear with cinnamon and brown sugar topped with whipped cream.
You know, even as I visualize a baked pear with cinnamon topped with whipped cream, I'm hungry. I'm hungry right away. Love where you're going with these. And again, I'm going to give you something else in a minute.
I'm getting the malty now. Warming in the core, calming, really calming.
Warming in the core and really calming. Good?
This is almost hot spiced apple cider, but subtract the apple flavor and add the other flavors mentioned above.
Almost like hot spiced apple cider without the apple, but with the other flavors mentioned, you know, like pear and blackberry.
Tastes almost like lacto-fermented tea.
Oh, interesting. Tastes almost like lacto-fermented tea. I'll tell you why this is so interesting, because actually one of the bacteria that's acting on the fermentation is lactobacillus.
Could you mention some of the fungi again that you talked
Yeah,
about?
so Cyberlinera is one of the fungi. You have something, and you're going to hate me, but you'll know I I'm having fun because I'm getting an 8-letter word in here. Uwe and this is going to be difficult because trying to think of how you would spell that. It's UWEBRAINIA. There may be an extra I in that, but it's close enough. You'll find it if you look for it. And then there is, I just mentioned, the no, that's the bacterium. There's something called Klebsiella in this as well. All things you don't need to know. You know, as tea drinkers, you need to understand what the flavors and quality, but it's all fun to know this stuff. All right.
One last.
Oh, and aspergillus, that's the most important one because again, in poor, that's usually at the top. Here, it's usually 3rd or 4th rank. So much, much less in this. And hence, you're not going to get that same type of flavor that you get in poor. I'm sorry.
Halfway down the cup, it seems more viscous and drying to me.
Halfway down the cup, there's more of a viscousness and drying sensation. I get that. So are there any other comments? No. Okay. Why am I going to return to the spicy, to the getting the baked pear with cinnamon and cloves out of the oven? Why am I returning to this? Because the Chinese would use a different description. So I'm going to share that description, and you would have gotten this if I had revealed one thing in the process earlier. So usually they talk about this as piney, P-I-N-E-Y. So a hint of pine in this. And actually, in the later steps when they're drying, they do dry it over a pine. So that is a flavor, and this is unlike, so the pine isn't overwhelming, is it? But it is there. And that, again, is one of the flavors that they would use. And they'd say that instead of spicy. They wouldn't say it instead of sweet and the fruit flavor, because they absolutely get that. And while they wouldn't use pear as the description, it's a very appropriate description. And they would, the additional thing would be the pine flavor. All right, how am I doing? Oh, I'm right on time for a change. So this one is kind of an exciting tea for us to try because normally in the West, this isn't easily findable. And ours is aged for a number of years, so you get the benefit of that. And one of the things, if this were just freshly finished, you wouldn't be able to use the 1-minute discard standard. You'd have to use something like 2 1-minute discard standards because the flavor is so aggressively tied in there. So, and it's not an easily acceptable flavor. The other thing, by the way, that the Chinese usually say about this, when it is a good producer, you don't get any hint of astringency or any hint of bitterness. And almost all of you said that that just really didn't exist. And it's because of a balance of the polyphenols and the amino acids. That's the technical reason that there isn't this umami or isn't any of these other tastes predominating. So that's just a technical discussion I wanted to put out there. This is a really interesting tea. And when we came upon it in Hunan, it took us but a nanosecond to decide to get this because it is so different from Pu'er, which has that earthiness. All 4 styles, the Fu brick, the black brick, and the Thousand Tales have different emphasis. The Thousand Tales, because it's wrapped in bamboo, even though so much of the process is similar to this, has a really different taste. And that bamboo overcomes any hint of bamboo, any hint of pine. So these craftsmen, and it's just this one area, by the way, in China does this. Nowhere else does this. And this was a tradition that somehow, and to give you a total cultural picture, cultural historical picture, even though villages can be next to one another, sometimes the dialects are mutually unintelligible. So really what I'm trying to tell you is that in small spatial areas, some interesting different cultural customs, different ways of processing teas arise. And one of the things, we talked about Northern Tip last week, one of the things that we've become more and more aware of is you can be within 100 yards of a location and two different farmers will end up, even though it's the same varietal, with two very different taste profiles. So it's really interesting, and some of that is built into the very specific terroir, because 100 yards away, maybe it's not so volcanic. This is one varietal done in 4 different ways. When you have the little yellow organisms growing in that food brick, that's because it's undergone a second microbial fermentation, and that's usually a 13-day situation, different temperature. So in the first microbial fermentation for this, the temperature is usually somewhere between 100 degrees and about 122 degrees. So a bunch of technical stuff, has nothing to do, well, actually it has a lot to do with end flavor, but as tea drinkers, really your focus is on that end flavor, and here's how it got there. All right.
A couple of piney comments.
Okay.
I get the pininess. When I smelled the rinsed leaves, I had a slight burning sensation in my eyes. The pine makes sense. The tea feels like a walk in a damp evergreen forest. I love this tea.
Okay, so one of the commentators said when first smelling the wet leaves, their eyes got a little teary or irritated because of a pininess. And then another commentator says, now that the pine has been identified, yes, it's like a walk through an evergreen forest. Good catches on those. And again, the pininess, we're not used to in our foods here in the West identifying anything as piney. And so what's our default? Our default is spicy. And then we start trying to parse, okay, what type of spice? Cinnamon, clove, cardamom, cumin, what are we really? Whereas in China, pininess actually is part of their cuisine, part of their taste profiles, and therefore it's easier for them to arrive at pininess. And if you ask them to arrive at cumin or some other spice, they would have a hard time because that's not in their usual meal repertoire. So just a difference that way. All of you, great job this morning in analyzing a very difficult tea. And it's only difficult insofar as you're not used to having something like this. This is not difficult. This is easy to drink. It has that sweetness, which we as Westerners like, hints of sweetness. It's really a pleasant tea. Great job as usual, all of you this morning. Really look forward to next week. This set of 3 teas has been very different, but different on purpose, because we wanted to take you, well, first off, I wanted to complete the Cliff Tea series, really, that started with the previous session. And then we wanted to take you through one of the most unusual of the black teas. And next week, we're going to do a wonderful raw black tea. So you're getting all parts of this black tea spectrum, and that's what we're trying to provide you. All right, look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a safe and wonderful week. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.